Hello, welcome to this overview of the key theoretical viewpoints in the module KV602, Critical Perspectives on Learning and Education. These slides will be in the form of a Prezi, also on Student Central, and I'll also put these slides as a PDF document up there as well, so you can have a look at it in your own time. The aim of this is to summarise the key theoretical viewpoints of this module, all of which are mentioned in LO1, those of critical theory, other structuralist perspectives, and the move to post-structuralism. What unites all of these is they follow a line of thought that develops from Marxism and all seek to explain inequality and how it is maintained, how it is reproduced from generation to generation. In terms of the module content, of course, that looks at education and how that plays a role in seeking to reproduce inequality from generation to generation. In this presentation, I'm not going to focus particularly on education as I want to outline the basic ideas behind these viewpoints. But it's worth saying that these theoretical viewpoints see it as a place where the status quo is maintained, the existing state of affairs is kept because of education, whereas inequality within the system and also because of the system. While Marxism isn't actually named in the assessment criteria, and you are not expected to apply Marxist theory to the setting or issue you choose to look at, an understanding of Marxist ideas is important, as critical theory and the other structuralists and indeed the post-structuralists are defined by their use or their rejection of Marxist ideas. This French poster, actually from much later, sums up a key inspiration for Marxism. Within a capitalist country there is inequality, and that comes from the way the economy is set up. The workers, the proletariat, produce goods or services, but the money goes into the boss's or the bourgeoisie's pocket, and they pay the worker a small amount of what their good or service is worth. This poster suggests that this state of affairs isn't natural or right. It instead advocates workers running factories or whatever it is they do and sharing the profits between themselves. Marxism states that this economic inequality is reproduced throughout society and that structures are in place to keep the bourgeoisie as the ruling class. Marxism can be traced back to the mid-19th century, the mid-1800s, and Karl Marx's publication of the Manifesto of the Communist Party, and it's been described as a grand narrative. This means it gives a single explanation or story of the way humans relate to each other, of human affairs, and it in fact says history moves in one direction, a direction that will ultimately lead to a revolution by the proletariat, the workers, who will have had enough of the bourgeoisie exploiting them. And it says this is inevitable. The job of people who support Marxism is to help this happen quicker. A key concept Marx used to explain the way inequality is maintained was his idea that the base, everything to do with economic production and affairs, the base shapes the superstructure, and this is other aspects of society and culture. He said this happened because economic relations and systems determined what happened elsewhere in society, and then those parts of the superstructure serve to maintain and give legitimacy to the base. An educational example could be the way captains of industry influence the education system. So the education system creates future workers who have the particular skills and dispositions they are looking for. Marxism as a grand narrative was quite comforting to its supporters because it said revolution was going to come, and it's just the job of the supporters to help speed it up. And the idea is that the supporters of Marxism would help the proletariat to rid themselves of their false consciousness. And in fact, that job is to help rid the proletariat of their false consciousness, their false understanding of the world which makes them accept the current system as inevitable and fair. However, gradually over time, Marxism is increasingly questioned as the proletariat revolution seems further and further away, and rather than conditions for workers getting worse, conditions for workers improved, which led to the question of why a system that seems so unequal kept going and reproduced itself. We have these structuralist traditions which seek to explain why this revolution doesn't happen. And they can be put under this umbrella, and I wouldn't use the term umbrella in your assignment, but this is a way of thinking about it. They can be put under this umbrella of structuralism, And we can have both the critical theory of the Frankfurt School and also ideas associated with French structuralists later on. A particular focus that unites these viewpoints is a focus on how structures in society lead to the reproduction of inequality, structures which emphasise the importance of culture and social interactions, explanations beyond economic conditions, as well as looking at the dangers of what are termed instrumental rationality. Instrumental rationality is an approach to human affairs that argues for people to follow the course of action necessary to achieve their ends. Basically, the ends justify the means, and most often the course of action needed in order to have a better society. This is criticised by structuralists as a dangerous approach to human affairs, and it can lead to the oppression of one group so another group can achieve their aims. Two key examples of this are industrialisation, which saw the lives of many workers become intolerable with poor conditions at home and work as the bosses achieved wealth and countries became richer. So whilst the country achieved a better outcome, it became richer, people suffered. The second key example are the outrages of the Nazis, culminating in the Holocaust. These followed a line of argument that this would be a better society for the Nazis if they could rid themselves of undesirable elements. A quick word on terminology. Whilst the critical theory of the Frankfurt School can be placed under the structuralist umbrella, they were really structuralists before such a name was used. Structuralism really comes as a name after World War II. So, critical theory. In the strictest sense, this is associated with members of the Frankfurt School that formed in the early 1920s, and Adorno, pictured here, is a key example which we've spent some time on in sessions. The Frankfurt School followed three key assumptions. One, inequality is a fact. It exists. Second, it's made to feel normal and just, and this comes from the way our culture, mass media, the education system, etc. subtly emphasises that this is the normal state of affairs. And three, it seeks to change this state of affairs after identifying it. It seeks to change, get rid of inequality after identifying it and understanding it. A key change can be seen in the Frankfurt School between before World War II and after World War II. And there was a move to a greater emphasis on how totalitarian regimes came to power and maintained power after World War II as a result of the Nazis. Adorno's concepts of full and half education and the totalitarian character are products of this change. These ideas can be related to education and considering the subtle way curriculum and the hidden curriculum influence acceptance of the way things are. After World War II, other thinkers with a similar-ish perspective develop around the name structuralists. They emphasise the way inequality is reproduced through the structures in society. They have an idea that the structures really determine people's lives. And they were also arguing that individuals don't have very much choice or agency around that state of affairs. Two key individuals we've looked at are Althusser, with his ideas of the ISA and the RSA and the importance of ideology within that, and also Bourdieu, who conceptualised reproduction of inequality through forms of capital, field, habitus, and the way symbolic violence stops people from challenging inequality elsewhere. Broadly speaking, structuralist thinkers still accepted Marx's ideas that the base determined the superstructure, as did the critical theory of the Frankfurt School. And in turn, the superstructure reinforced the base. They also accept that. Economic power led to power over the way people live their lives, who then accept inequality as normal and fair. Now, the term postmodernism is one that comes up in many of the readings around this module, and it helps to explain the shift from structuralism to post-structuralism, but is distinct from post-structuralism. Postmodernism is different to post-structuralism, and it's worth giving a brief outline of what it's concerned with, as this is a term which we all see in your readings. Really, from the 1960s onwards, and particularly through the 70s and 80s, this movement, this way of thinking, postmodernism, rejects previously held ways of looking at the world. More positivist notions of general truths are rejected, They reject theories that seek to explain world affairs in easy stories or grand narratives in the way that Marxism is, or can be characterised as. Instead, they emphasise randomness, personal interpretations, and diversity of experience. They question the possibility of being objective. Key influences for us in this module are that they reject this grand narrative of Marxism, the belief that this theory can explain all of human history. They question the belief in structures being effective and managing people, and argue instead that power is not exercised top-down, with a kind of structure working from the ruling class of bourgeoisie informing what the proletariat do. Instead, they see power as something which is all around us. So finally, moving on to post-structuralism, this takes its influence from postmodernist thought and dissatisfaction with structuralist thinking. And from the late 60s onwards, key thinkers like Foucault and Derrida are characterised as being under this label. There's an emphasis on individual agency. Individuals have more ability to impact on events. Power's not always top-down. They argue that structures are not always effective and not the way to understand the world, hence post-structuralist. A key idea is that of discourse. Most associated with Foucault, the idea is that discourses exist around different subjects that produce what is common sense for a particular idea. And in limiting how we think about these topics, these subjects, then they limit how we act. In terms of education, an example would be a discourse 100 years ago that women really didn't need an education. This idea was all around, and this discourse led to girls achieving less in education. They received a less preferential treatment in school, they were taught different subjects, they got less education as a result. So the discourse informed how people thought about the subject, and it informed what actually happened as well. With that example, actually things have changed a great deal, and that's another feature of discourse, that they compete and they change, they don't stay the same. Post-structuralist approaches to education emphasise the way that discourses constrain action, but also emphasise the way that power has an effect on the way different people experience the world. This brings us to an end of this presentation on the key theories of KV602, and thank you very much for listening.